Welcome everybody to Villains and Creeps. This episode is going to be solely about the thing. We're going to do a comprehensive breakdown, our opinions on the whole story and who may be the thing or who may not be. We both got our opinions. I think they're pretty solid. And do you think that we solved this mystery, Gerald?
Oh God, who knows? It's one of those mysteries that people have been trying to solve for decades, and they still haven't figured it out. And even watching like commentary and stuff, they never reveal.
I don't know if you watched that, the John Carpenter and Kurt Russell commentary during the movie. And
Like
Kurt Russell even he might have had some opinions, then John
I
Carpenter
like
would just immediately reject him and say, no, no, that's
I
not it.
like Russell. Like every little while, he's trying to put him. So McCree was human, right? Like the whole time, he kept trying to
Yeah,
say it, and Carpenter just he couldn't have been. It's like shit. Or here again. We're back to this. It's
that
like
was
we're back
funny.
to it. Yeah, darn.
Scene by scene. The
Yeah,
alien ship enters the scene at the beginning of the movie. It crashed. We don't know exactly when it was.
yeah. That was the one thing I was going to ask too, if you ever found out that out. But yeah, we don't know exactly when that alien ship did crash. So we see it coming in the scene. It comes and it crashes, and then the movie starts.
Hmm.
And we have no idea how long it's been under the ice. Who found it? Obviously, the Norwegians did, and we kind of find out a little bit about it. Like they think it's been there for how long did they say? Like
100,000
100,000 years.
or speculated, which is ironic because he
Speculated.
was one of the things we know for sure. Maybe he was counting the days.
Alien ship crashes in Antarctica. Norwegians find it. Next thing we come up to is essentially a helicopter chasing a dog.
I mean, it goes to the helicopter chasing the dog, and then the next thing you see is McCready playing chess.
Yeah,
Now, I think that's kind of a foreshadowing. It could be where the computer, he's saying that the computer is cheating
yeah,
bitch. And that could
yeah,
be a sense of getting you into that this thing is not going to play fair. The Norwegians are yelling, and he pulls back a grenade. He loses it in the snow out of his hand. I don't see how that's even possible, or they were
I
so
know.
maybe their hands were slippery or whatever. And went into
Yeah,
the
I don't
snow. The
understand that
other
either.
Yeah, the other Norwegian went after it, and who would go after that? Like buried, who knows how deep it went trying to find it. And what are you going to do after? It's already pulled. It's like, that's the
Get
dumbest
away.
thing that happened.
That was really bad. But despite that, the other Norwegian's chasing the dog. He just
Mm,
ignores it. Helicopter explodes. Dog ends up running up to
Bennings.
Bennings and starts licking him. And then the Norwegian's yelling in Norwegian.
The
And
Norwegian says, get the hell away. It's not a dog. It's a thing. It's not real. Get away, idiots.
yeah, get away, idiots. And like, obviously, nobody understands Norwegian. So he shoots, tries to hit the dog, ends up hitting Bennings in the leg. If you do, I don't know if you saw it. I know you probably didn't see it, but you do see a wound on the dog's back leg in the
Yeah, I
movie.
didn't see that at
And
all.
they never really discuss it because in all the other scenes, when the dog's walking around the base just unimpeded, just whatever, watching people, see what the
Hmm.
hell's going on, see who we can get, it's not hurt anymore. But in that scene, you do see like a wound on the dog's leg. You have to watch it again,
I'll definitely watch it
and
again
you'll
because
see the dog has like a red spot in the back of his leg, like it was shot, but it wasn't acting like it was shot, which could be another thing. I don't know if they left that in there on purpose or if maybe they took it out of the movie because it would have been once again a vector for the thing to actually get into somebody else by somebody stitching up the dog too,
it might have
to
been a
go,
way
hey, I
to
got to
create
fix this
sympathy
dog.
for the dog too. Like, oh, why are they doing
Yeah.
this to a dog?
Yeah, what a jerk, what jerk shoots at a dog,
Uh-huh.
man's best friend. What the hell? But then, at that point, after Bennings gets shot,
Gary breaks the window
Gary
and he
breaks the
shoots
window
the
and shoots that dude
Norwegian.
right in the eye.
Hmm. So
And
after that, Bennings drinks the bottle, and we're unsure what happens or who drinks the bottle. Could have been McCready, takes his bottle back, and Bennings might have been affected. McCready might have been affected, or whoever might have drank it. It's just
yeah, see,
speculative.
yeah, at that point, like the dog goes and tries to lick. We'll say for the sake of argument,
Bennings.
yeah, he licks Bennings, and Bennings gets assimilated right there,
Hmm.
or starts the assimilation process, and then immediately grabs that bottle to drink. So other people will be also assimilated. Anybody who drinks out of that bottle, possibly, if it goes by saliva the way it does. So that would be a way of the alien transferring or assimilating more than one for sure.
Hmm.
At least getting out of the dog. and transferring over to them, to a human, and then that human in turn infecting multiple humans with said bottle of whiskey because everybody drinks whiskey.
Hmm.
So that could have been right there the vector. They were both assimilated, weren't they? Because like, Palmer was the one that was assimilated in the chairs. Mind you, we're going further in the movie.
Yeah, they were.
So it could have been either one, and they were both
Hmm.
at that point. So even though we don't know which one it was, it's still, it got one of them, you know?
And that's one thing we could later speculate on is
Yeah.
when exactly did Norris get
Get
assimilated?
assimilated. And when did
If
Palmer
that
get
was
assimilated?
Palmer. Because I know that they were saying that it was someone in the movie, they put someone generic. It wasn't even one of the characters.
No, yeah,
We could
yeah, that was the
speculate
one thing
who would
too.
be.
But us knowing, like, we know that. Like, I was gonna say the same thing, but for sake of argument, like, for anybody watching the movie who doesn't know that was just a generic guy that was actually like a stunt double they just
Hmm.
put in there to use, who just happened to have curly hair.
Uh-huh.
He still used that silhouette for a reason,
Hmm.
and he did it just to create suspense. So, like, it gets us watching it thinking, okay, the only ones who have curly hair are going to be Norris and Palmer.
Hmm.
Obviously, it can't be McCready because
No
McCready's out.
glasses, no beard, and it can't be a
Yeah,
black guy
yeah, and then the beard because McCready has a beard.
or a bald
So,
head with
or a bald head, yeah, because the white guy fro, essentially, the Jew
mhm,
fro
the true
is
fro.
what it is.
So that's who
Yeah,
we could eliminate maybe Copper, Matt Clark, Yeri, Blair, Knowles, and Childs for
yeah, you can
sure
eliminate
from that
almost all of them.
shadow.
The only ones you know for sure that have that type of hairstyle is going to be Palmer and Norris. Palmer Norris.
Yeah, Palmer North.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Jesus. It's hard to keep track because there's 12 freaking characters, and you don't see them much in scenes. You do see them. You try to break them down, like, okay, Childs, the other cook or the cook, Knowles.
Knowles.
They're easy to kind of distinguish. Not because they're black, just because you see them more. I mean,
No, no, it's
Knowles is,
because they're black. You can,
yeah, it is. I'm
that's
not gonna
why.
lie. It's easier to know those two. The two black guys are in there, and most horror movies, black guys die first, and these guys didn't. So hey,
Yeah, no. I mean,
they
you
didn't.
could, that's a lot of thing that we could cut to that real quick. People, black people dying in movies right away. Childs didn't, and you could go all the way back to, what's it called? The Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah,
Made it
absolutely.
all the way to the end. People don't.
Then he gets shot by assholes at the very
Yep.
end.
Hmm.
What the
He
fuck?
still survived the whole thing.
Yes, yes, he did.
So moving on, Mac and Copper make it, arrive at the Norwegian camp. They find everything was destroyed. They find blood everywhere on walls. They move on to different parts. They find a guy's throat cut. And that's kind of always haunting that he cut his own throat and he went so deep into his neck. Like it had to be
That was
something so
crazy
distressing
because,
that he had to cut
well,
so deep into his neck like that.
not only did he cut his throat, but I think he cut his wrists too.
He did.
Because you see, like, well, so you see one wrist. I don't know if you see them both. You can't do both wrists anyway. You cut too deep in the wrist, you lose all
Yeah, it's
hand
gonna sever your,
motion. You
yeah.
sever your tendons. You can't
Mhm.
use your digits. Hand motion goes out the window.
Yep.
So he'd have to like cut his wrist
Unless someone else did it.
and then went and then fall. So that was, yeah, to cut that deep is pretty freaking nuts. And it just kind of like foreshadows the fact that he did it, or like shows like he had to have done it to himself because the razor's still in his hand.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, like it shows the razor in his hand for a reason. It shows a slit wrist on one hand, like the right arm's or the left arm's, I think it was the right anyway.
Yeah, it
It's
was right.
slit too. And then to like, man, that is pretty freaking distressing. I mean, good Lord. Oof.
Yeah. Get more than halfway through your neck. That's
Yeah. I mean, you sit there to cut your wrist, like, oh, it's going too slow. That's it.
mhm.
Maybe.
So what ends up happening is that they find the block of ice where the thing was in, and they speculate, what could this be, essentially. And then they find the videotape and all the notes, and Copper takes that and they return to the base and they let everyone know what was going on exactly when they return, like what happened over there. And they also recovered remains. So they return to the base. They tell them everything they discovered. They also found remains of the half-face creature thing that's burned. And that's one thing that's distressing to me was what happens off scene. So essentially, Copper and Mac, that thing later drips to absorb Bennings later. So who knows what happened off scene in the helicopter? That thing could have came alive and absorbed them too. And that could have happened twice. They went a second time with Norris, Copper, and Mac. And that's how Norris could have been infected by them, though we don't know for sure. But I would have never went up in the helicopter with whatever this thing is, burned or not. I don't know about you.
I would have never I don't know, I'd have never taken it with us.
Yep.
But man, How, why? Why would you bring that with you?
Yep.
It's like, okay, hey, fascinating. It's a weird anthropomorphic thing that has two faces. How strange is that? Let's bring it back with us. No, I just leave it there. It's like, you know what? No, fuck that. We're going to leave that there. We're going to document it. Hey, that was there. If we want to go back, we can go back later, but we're not bringing this with us. We're certainly not bringing it into the damn building. We're going to leave it outside in the cold to stay frozen.
But
I wouldn't want them not knowing though what it is, wanting to know, hey.
In their defense.
Yeah, in their defense. So one of them even said, what are you talking about? This is the like geological find of the century or something like that, or
yeah, this is the find of the century. This is going to win someone the Nobel Peace Prize, what Norris later says.
Yeah.
Or not Norris, Bennings.
Oh, Bennings, yeah.
But also, too, is that's what they're there for in Antarctica, is to find shit. So I think that's what was on their mind. Like, maybe we found something and this is what we're here for. So you could just give them the benefit of the doubt for that. Mac and Copper return to the base. The dog is still on looking. They cut to the dog and it's still ominous, like he's learning things or seeing what's going on. Autopsy is conducted by Blair, and that's one thing that I wanted to speculate too, because he got blood on him all over his arm.
Yeah.
From doing the autopsy.
Including that too. Did you notice like the way they're working around this stuff? Like, so the guy has blood all over his hands and arms and stuff. Like, instead of like, taping up and stuff like how we would do now, it's like, hey, you don't want to get blood all over you. You don't want it around you. They're just like, nah, rip. That's weird. Throw. Yeah. Guy's over here chewing on a pen, right on it, puts it down, probably in blood and stuff. Still chewing on his pen. It's like, guys, what the heck are you doing? Why?
Yeah, and right there, that could have infected so many people. I mean, that's also to say that they're just a bunch of dudes too. I mean,
yeah, it's like, nah, this is weird. Look at this thing, rip. They go into the rec room, and then that's when he freaks out about the dog finally.
Bennings asks Clark to put in the dog handler into the pen. When he puts him in the pen, he's kind of like, he's acting kind of strange because he sits down and he maybe doesn't smell any dogs, but the dogs kind of are looking up at him. It's kind of ominous. And that also cuts to the scene where Childs and Palmer are watching videos in their room and they're passing a joint back and forth. So Palmer could have infected Childs right there.
Yeah, and see that's the thing too about this. Like, so the time that they left in the helicopter, and we're focused on Doc and McCready, and the Norwegian side, we have no idea what happened back home. And that dog was wandering around because obviously it went up to somebody who didn't look like him. You kind of get a little
side into that with him sneaking through the doorway and he goes into the shadow. You can't see of who it is exactly.
Yeah. So if it is Palmer, because that's one of the guys we thought it would have been, then right there, Palmer passing the joint down to Childs and then back and forth smoking. Right there, you got two people possibly assimilated. You got to think that it already assimilated somebody around that point, just because it knew it was going to get found out by getting put in the kennel. Because you watch, like, even the handler watches them. Clark watches the dog, like, the dog's acting strange. I put this dog with other dogs. It was kind of reluctant going in, but it went in slow. It goes in slow and then it just lays down rigid. And it's just funky. And then as soon as he gets out of scene, the dogs freak the F out, start barking.
Well, I mean,
they know it's not.
Splits in fours, like it blooms like a flower.
The dogs even knew prior
so
to
Clark hears the commotion and he runs back in to see what's going on. And then he runs back to notify everyone.
This goes back to what you were talking about when we were off camera. is that the only time it ever reveals itself is when it's figured out.
Yeah, I think
Hence,
I'll make that point at the end.
okay. So that is that right there, would kind of cement that is the fact that the monster goes in there or the alien goes in there, it gets figured out by the dogs, so the dogs know instinctively, hey, this isn't a dog. F
Hmm.
off. We gotta get away from this. And then that's when, like you said, the face splits in half and it starts attacking dogs, and Clark runs over and gets people to help, and they find the monster, essentially just killing dogs. And now when they open the dildo, two dogs jump out.
Hmm.
So we see that. And don't they knock over Clark? Because he's trying to get in. It's like, what the hell's going on? And then these two dogs just jump out. And then by then, I think that's when McCready breaks that fire alarm, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he busts it open with a beer and then starts it, and they rush over there to figure out the hell's going on. Then he yells to get Childs to get the flamethrower.
They're all at the door. They see what's going on with the dog thing and how it's changing and getting to everything. And before that even happens, it's like a big mass, and you could see the eyes open and everything. A part of it with hands, and that's a speculation about everything, is that if that thing escapes, so it crashes through the ceiling and then it lifts itself up. A lot of people claim that they could see it drop down when Childs comes in, because Child kind of hesitates because he's so shocked, or he might even be the thing. He's like, this kind of feels wrong because it's one of me, but you could also say that he may still be a human and say he's just natural human instinct,
Yeah.
where he's scared of what's going on. Like, what the fuck is this thing? So he burns it, and supposedly people could see it fall down, but I don't know. That's what I always thought in the past. This thing made it out of the roof, and no one's worried about that. Like, why aren't they trying to search this thing down? It's just running around camp. So you could add credence to that, saying that it may have burned because they weren't too worried about it, but you think everyone would be worried about it if it had escaped. Like, why are they not worried about it if it did escape?
So it could have escaped there, or like we saw with later on when we see with Norris where the head falls off. That'll be later where it splits off. It could have even when it slammed up there and lifted itself up, could have split a part of it off into the roof too, and we never really know about.
Hmm.
Or it could have escaped with those two dogs getting out. Now that thing was spewing that stuff all over that dog, and I guarantee it got into the dog's face and mouth and all that stuff. And you know how dogs do. You know, if they need to clean themselves, what do they do immediately? Something's on them. They lick it.
Hmm.
You know, oh, lick, get that off me. Because that's how they clean themselves. They can't just go into a shower like us or go to a sink and wash its hands. So yeah, that's how it could assimilate another dog through the saliva of it spewing that stuff out. It's because the dog licked it and got it into its system faster. Just like if we would. So like if something spewed all over you and you just licked it off you, yeah, it got to you because it got in through your mouth. Also take in account that like our immune system would probably try to fight it off to you until it just
I
couldn't
don't think that
anymore.
would be
You
a
know,
factor.
because looking at the computer screen when Blair's looking at it, yeah, it almost immediately replicates whatever it's going to. It just goes boom and
Yep.
replicates the dog. I'm just
Hmm.
thinking of it too much in like biological sense as far as, hey, it needs a way to get in faster, but it can get into you. I just think it would take longer if it had to go through a smaller, like, cellular basis than, like, it's still going to assimilate pretty fast because I think it assimilates those guys pretty quick anyway, but
Hmm.
it'd just be a little slower to where you still gain humanity or you still have, like, your conscious thought before it takes
Yeah,
over.
I don't even think that matters because, like what Child says, where if you were a perfect copy, how would you know if it was
That
me?
too.
I think that it's exactly copies people, and it leaves them with who they are, and it's so perfect that they're still going to act the same and react the
So,
same.
so in that sense, when it does copy somebody, do you think it kind of like loses a little bit of itself for a bit? Because it starts like copying so much that like it's a perfect copy that it'll lose itself a little bit, like not realizing, oh, wait a minute. It's like I'm Childs, but I'm also this other thing. And then it starts to be like, oh wait, yeah, I actually have a mission. I have to do this. I have to get off this planet. Or I have to go somewhere else.
I think that it
Or do
copies.
you think it forgets, like, it slightly forgets, like, hey, wait a minute, who else do I assimilate? Like, I assimilated Childs, but did I assimilate Blair? Or did I assimilate Palmer? Or did I assimilate McCready? Like, so to the point, like, it doesn't know who's who either.
mm,
It's like, well, wait a minute. Are you one of me? Am I one of you? What's going on? It's just confused.
and that's one thing that it takes over someone so well that it's in fear of each other, that it knows that
Yeah,
it copies someone so perfect that it knows each other is a direct threat because how McCready reacts to everything where he just gets the job done. It knows that it needs to be afraid of McCready because that's how it exactly copied him.
yeah. So that's how
So
McCready's
he's a
drive is.
direct threat to everything. And I think that's how they work independently. It's more that they have an independent mind. Each individual is trying to survive its best in any way possible.
Which,
Rather than being a hive where if someone was controlled, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. I know he's the thing, but it's
yeah, okay,
so aggressive to one another that they know that they have to eliminate one another in order to survive. So it's more a survival thing than it is that we're all together and it's okay, we're infected. So I think even
yeah,
if
we're
it
both
went
infected.
to,
Don't worry about it.
yeah, if it went to the general public, it would be just mass chaos because they would be killing each other too, as well as the humans. So who knows who would be left at the end? Would it just be one creature? And maybe that's what they did to the past world, is that they went into all these aliens at the beginning and it killed that whole population of wherever it was. It got in a ship and just went somewhere to maybe even escape because it was so violent, trying to escape from the other things that were assimilating all the other creatures, that it escaped to somewhere else and it just started all over again. Maybe that's what happens to it. After the autopsy, Blair reveals about the dogs and how it's able to absorb them. Also, well, even that's in the aftermath of everything that happens with the dog. And Blair kind of suspects, well, he not kind of suspects, he does suspect Clark because he was the only one around the dog. And he's talking about how long were these dogs out and roaming around everybody. So then it transitions to where they're looking at the videotape, and the videotape it shows the Norwegians and them finding the craft and everything. It's like, what is that? And they, whatever it was, they blew it up and they have all their notes and they're going through it. Right after that, go to the crash site. So it's Mac, Copper, and Norris. They go to the crash site to see exactly what it was, what they blew up.
I can't remember. Did they start burning stuff immediately after killing the dogs,
No,
or was that later?
it was later.
Was that after they came back? Okay,
Yeah, after they
so they
came
just
back.
let that stuff stand. Damn.
Yeah,
So
so it could have been there around everyone, and who knows what could have gotten to what. And I think that's you could heavily speculate that everyone could have been the thing at that point because
yeah,
the off
absolutely,
time that they
because
show in the helicopter, Mac, Norris, or Copper could have been one of the things, and it could have. And I'll just say that now, and I think we just previously spoke about it, is that they could have made such a perfect copy that even when Mac did the tests it wouldn't have reacted because he's such a bold-faced guy that he didn't care what was going on, that he's such a strong individual. It's not going to show up. And that's the only reason every time it was threatened. So the dog pen, it was trapped. So it wanted to get away. That's why it revealed itself. So it just takes certain circumstances to reveal itself. That's what we'll later talk about. And that's the only
yeah,
reason that it came out. But besides that, copies would be so perfect that it wouldn't even react to the blood test, no matter what it did.
yeah. Hence the whole entire speech of Child saying, "Well, if I was a similar and I was a perfect copy, how would you know? How would
Would you
I
know?
know? You know,
Yep. And that
how would
goes,
anybody know?"
uh-huh. And that goes to the blood test where you could see his face and he looks worried. Like, how would you not know that you're the thing? Because that's what he suggests. Like, you wouldn't know.
Yeah. So that's why he actually had that kind of like genuine fear on his face when they were doing the test. It's like, oh, I'm so uncertain. Like, well, am I?
Yeah.
Well, shit.
They make it to the
So
crash site, Copper, Norris, and Mac. They go down to look at the ship and He was like, they blew it up. Like, they blew it up, and then they find the block of ice where it escaped, and they excavate it. And that's what I always thought it was weird. Like, how did they know to go right there? It was buried so deep in the snow. I mean, maybe,
Yeah, it's just buried so deep that they had to use thermite to get to it. You know.
yeah, it's weird. So, I mean, it happened the way that it happened, but that's the only thing you could speculate on is that anyone could have been turned in that helicopter just seeing things off scene.
And then the fact that they like Norris even states because Norris states when they find it, like they ask, well, how long has this been here?
Hmm.
And Norris says, like 100,000 years or something. That's where you had that theory that hey, he probably what if he was turned and he just knew
Hmm.
he knew how long it's been there. But
Yeah.
like if any of us would look at it, like I don't know, unless we're in that field, like to know how deep something would have to be to calculate the years, how long it's been under the ice.
Hmm.
None of us would freaking know. It's like, oh, this thing's been here for a while. Who
And
knew?
that's
The
one
guy
one
gives
thing.
almost an exact time.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, to know the exact time, like maybe he knew exactly what happened because he was part of the thing, and
yeah,
he just known by memory reflexes. And that's the prequel. I think that's one thing that the prequel messed up is that the thing would automatically turn on anyone. It wouldn't reveal itself in danger like in this movie. Like you knew that something scary was going to happen just for, horror movies are terrible nowadays. And they injected that element and they should have kept it the same way where it only revealed itself when it was in danger.
yeah,
Moving on there, they go back to the base. Maybe we could say that Norris was the thing then, maybe not. Maybe he
yeah.
infected things on a helicopter. So they gather everyone up in the rec room and they talk about where it might have came from. It came from outer space. Child says, "Do you believe any of this voodoo bullshit, Blair?" And Blair gives him the absent look. He doesn't say anything. He knows that something's going on and it's terrible. At that point, he's real troubled about what's going on, and of course they're in fear. Knowles comes in and he finds a pair of someone's dirty drawers, their underwear. You kind of say that right then, and they speculate that later that it rips their clothes when they turn. But it's kind of weird, like who would throw their underwear in there? I mean, guys are
Yeah.
dirty guys, but still, like who's gonna throw that in the kitchen trash? It's kind of gross.
What else kind of grosses me out is like, okay, they're dirty draws, they're soiled, looks like, they're nasty as shit. He just
Yeah.
throws it out there, and then like the next thing McCree does is just grabs them, like not even no like rhyme or reason, not even like oh those are fucking gross, stick,
He picks them up
and
and goes,
like, just
that's later when he was in his
that's
room
what
too. When he was in
like,
his
dude,
room
what the
too,
fuck are you
alone, he was
doing?
like smelling them. Like what?
It's like, why are you just messing with this dirty underwear? Just that's weird. Bare
Yeah.
hands, just tossing it. Good God, guys, come on.
Yeah, it's like he was saving them for later. Like he was smelling them and then put them in the door, and it's like these are for
These are these mine?
later.
Nah, can't be mine.
It wakes up after 1,000 years, and how could it look like a dog? They still look for Blair for answers even after that, and he's still just absent faces, like he's doesn't want to say anything. So that will take you to the scene where he's on the computer. It shows the cells of the dog, and it shows the cells of the thing, and it shows how the cells absorb the dog. After it shows the assimilation, it says the probability of one or more team members may be infected by an
Like
intruder organism is
75%.
75%. Yeah, so the projection by the computer after that is if the intruder organism reaches a civilized area's entire world population infected within 27,000 hours from first contact. So that equals 1,125 days. So 36 months, essentially, the whole population would be taken over. After seeing that projection by this computer screen, which I thought it was pretty cool, that whole sequence with the computer and
Yeah.
the simulation, everything. He opens his door and he grabs a gun like he needs to prepare himself. So was it a thing where, and you said that we're going to keep on saying thing. So was it a
Yeah.
thing where he knew he had to be violent because the things were going to be coming after him, or was he more afraid of who was the thing? So you could take it on both basis that if he was the creature already, he was preparing for to fight with them because he knew that he would be a direct threat to them.
And that kind of goes to the whole entire, well, with your point, it's kind of tough because it's the perfect replication, and you don't realize like you are the thing, or the alien's the alien, or
Mhm.
it's the replicant's there, and it's such a good copy that it's still a threat to itself. I don't think Blair was assimilated yet into the thing at that point when he was doing the tests. Like he was still speculating, trying to figure everything out, and him destroying all the stuff. Now, I think that was still him just trying to stop it from getting away, getting into like civilization. I think he already came to terms that, hey, we're not getting off this continent here. I got to break everything. I got to stop communication so people don't come. I got
Mhm.
to sabotage everything.
That's what happens next. McCready goes back and he's smelling the draws
Yeah,
at his
he's in
desk.
his freaking room. You
Yeah,
know?
for the intercom where he says Doc tells him to get the shit out of the storeroom. So they go to the
Yeah,
storeroom. Windows is there with Bennings. They're saying, "Sorry, Mac, we wanted to get some things out of there so they could put all the creatures in there." Fuchs goes up to Mac and he says that he wants to talk to him outside. That is very important. And Mac's kind of like, "Come on, dude. I just want to get out of here and rest." So they meet outside off scene, and then in the meantime, Windows pulls up the sheet where one of the creatures is. He says, "We should just burn these things."
yeah. And that was when it was dripping.
No, not yet.
No? Oh, I thought it was.
No.
When do
So
they, when did he go get the key? Because
he had
Will,
the keys the whole time. He lifted up the blanket. He turned around. He didn't see that the blanket kind of rose, that it still had activity or was still
yeah,
alive. Then he talks to Bennings and he asks Bennings, "What should I do with the keys?" And he says, "Well, go give them to Gary. Go
yeah,
back to Gary." So that places where the keys are and who had the keys. It was Windows the whole time.
yeah. Windows
Later
had the
comes
keys
into
and he
play.
drops them.
He said, "Well, we should just burn these things." Bennings says, "We can't burn this thing. It's going to win someone the Nobel Peace Prize someday." Windows leaves. Bennings is looking around stuff on shelf, and then it starts to drip. So the next thing in the scene is Mac is talking to Fuchs, and Fuchs got a hold of the notes from Copper, the doctor, or I'm sorry, Blair.
Yeah,
So Blair did all the tests with the computer and everything, and his Fuchs was telling Mac that these things still have cellular activity, even though that they were burned.
yeah.
And
Even though they're burned, it still has
yeah,
activity in it.
and they were really like, wow, this is pretty scary. That's how I got the scene. And then Windows walks back into the storeroom, switches to that scene, and that's when you see Bennings surrounded by the creatures. There's tentacles everywhere. It's in his mouth everywhere, and it shows his clothes were ripped off, so he just had his pants on and was without a shirt. So that confirms that it does rip your clothes when it takes you over. And that's one thing that I speculated on is that I think that's it had to live. So it was put in the kennel, it needed to escape. It was burnt, it couldn't use that body functionally anymore to turn into anything. It had to absorb Bennings in order to get into another body. So if you consider that Bennings was one of the things that it also directly kills or tries to absorb the other things to be in Bennings. So that's was my whole thing is that it only reveals itself when it's in danger and also will attack its other kind to absorb them because it knows it's a direct threat or it's something that it needs in this case. Windows runs outside to alert Fuchs and Mac. They run back inside and Bennings is gone. The Windows is broken. They run outside after him because they see him running. He drops to the ground and they say, "It's Bennings." And he said, "No, it's not Bennings." And you see him and he lifts up his arm and he still has tentacle like arms and he does that scream, which is one of my favorite scenes from the movie because it's so dark. It's so ominous.
Yeah, and don't forget that Windows drops the keys there too.
Yeah.
You hear an
When he
audible
ran out
drop of
for
keys when he runs out to
to
find
see
people. So
to get Mac and Fuchs. Yeah. So he does drop the keys. Mac tips over the barrel of gasoline and lights it on fire. The Bennings thing.
did we see everybody there outside burning?
Everybody was there.
Like,
So everyone was outside except for Blair. they get all the remains, they take it outside and burn them. That's when everyone is.
Yeah.
So there was that amount of time where everyone gathered, they got this stuff, and they took it outside to burn. Windows to try to get a hold of someone again, to keep on trying, even though he wasn't able to. Then Mac sees Blair, what looks like Blair, running out of the helicopter. He goes to look at the helicopter, and it's all broken. And that's when he hears gunshots in the distance, and Blair's freaking out inside, and Blair's smashing up the radios. Childs tells Mac what's going on. They subdue him. And also, that's one thing to add. He comes back and says the dogs are all dead. He killed the dogs, and that flashes to Clark going to look at him, and there's axes in the dogs. So he he smashed up the remaining dogs pretty good. There's no dogs left. It returns to the scene where he's in the radio lab, still smashing stuff. They subdue him with a table, and Mac knocks him out with the classic punching sounds. Tie him up, and they put him in the shack. So in the shack, Blair says, I don't know who to trust. Mac says in return, was like, I know what you're saying. And as he takes a drink of the alcohol, I don't know if you caught that or not, it says,
Yeah, I did.
Trust is a tough thing to come by these days. So you could kind of speculate, did McCready kind of give him the thing by drinking the alcohol and give it back to him? And that's kind of a setup to say that who can you trust? You can't even trust me. And as he drinks his alcohol and gives it to him so he could drink it and get infected too.
Yeah.
Then after they put him in the room before they leave, Blair says, watch Clark, because he was the one around the dogs. Then you could also think about that too, was he absorbed because he was around the dogs so much? Could be a possibility. Yeah. They're cut off. They're saying they can't leave anywhere. The snowplows are messed up, and the helicopter, they can't reach anybody. So they're just talking about how they're cut off from everything. And that's where Childs makes that statement, and probably the quote of the movie, in my opinion. If I was an imitation, a perfect imitation, how would you know if it was really me? The blood serum was mentioned right there to people. So you could speculate that Childs, Mac, Copper, if they knew about the blood serum, it could have been one of them who got to it before they actually did the things. So who knows?
Yeah, that's when they find out the blood is all tampered with, or it's all cut open.
Yeah.
Then they burned the blood. That was weird too.
I mean, they had to do it. They found the blood draining out. They then took it outside, and that's when they fight about the keys, trying to blame Gary. He said, you were the only one with the keys. And Gary's saying, I didn't have the keys at all. And Windows looks at him and kind of backs away because he knew he was the last one with the keys. And if they knew he was the last one.
And that Gary never mentioned Windows, period. He only mentioned the Copper and then Gary having the keys. He never mentioned Windows. That's why Windows backed away and took off. I think Windows thought, oh, fuck, this guy's the thing.
Well, really,
because he never mentioned me.
Who knew that he had the keys was Bennings. Yeah. And Bennings, of course, was burned. He was supposed to give the keys back to Gary.
And he never did.
Windows runs down the hallway, and he breaks the glass to get a shotgun. And while he's loading it, Gary comes in and points the gun at him. He says, are you going to trust Gary? Gary could be one of those things. And he puts the gun down. Gary turns around and he says, I think it would be better if someone was to lead. And then Childs comes up and he says, I'll lead. And then McCready interrupts and said, whoa, we need someone more level-headed than you, Childs. So that's where McCready becomes the leader of the whole crew.
Who else? Well, he tried to give it to Norris, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, Norris.
And Norris refused.
He says, I'm not really feeling up to it.
Yeah, I'm not feeling up to this. And then that's when Childs said, I'll do it. And no. Level-headed and all.
After that, that's when they burn the blood outside. And McCready goes through the speech where he says this thing wants to hide an imitation. And it's just basically saying that it won't reveal itself, that it's going to hide in the shadows. He orders Norris to shoot up Copper, Gary, and Clark. The person we probably know is the Thing. Norris is in charge of these three people that are tied up. And then he goes in the room, and that's where Palmer freaks out and doesn't want to be around Windows because he's telling him to break up in teams. Says, Palmer, you go with
Yeah,
Windows. And he's like, I'm not going with Windows. And then he says, Max says, oh,
I'll go
calm
with
down.
Childs.
You could go with me, Windows. Yeah, he says, I'm going to go with Childs. So that's when they break up in groups, and Mac goes with Knowles and Windows outside. Before then, that's what we left out, is that Mac is making a recording, talent, like just making a record of everything that's going on. Nobody trusts anybody. That's one thing that I thought was weird in the movie, that he had his back to the doorway. It kind of seems like someone was looking in, maybe.
Yeah, like watching them do this
But at the
monologue
same
or
time,
little
like,
tape
why would you
recording.
have your back to the doorway? It's pretty weird.
Especially if you're not trusting anybody, you know,
Yeah.
and these things are around. Because he wasn't in his shack, he was somewhere else in the compound with this
Mhm.
recording, you
Yeah.
know. So it wasn't like he was kind of isolated, knew where he was, and somewhere familiar. He was, well, could have been somewhere familiar, but still, too many entry points and to have your back toward the door is kind of bad, you know.
Yeah. Why would you do that under? It's kind of like, I don't know. It's
Same
really,
thing of, it's also the same thing of splitting up. Why the hell would you split up if you know something's going on? I want to keep everybody in the same freaking room and figure it out, you know,
mhm.
and not, oh, well, do the Scooby Doo things like, well, I'm going to go with this person and you're going to go with that person. And we're all going to take off. No, whatever you need to get done, get it done together.
Yeah.
Go together, get it done. Never leave each other's sides. Figure this shit out.
Definitely Scooby
Zero
Doo should
survival.
have kept together.
Zero survival instinct, man.
Yeah. That transitions to Fuchs. He tells Fuchs to go read Blair's notes when they burn all the things when they're outside. He's looking at the notes, and the same thing happens where he comes up behind him and he's just working at a desk and he's not worried about what's going on behind him. Fuchs. So that's where he talks about where prepare our own meals and we should eat only from cans. That's where he tells him,
Yeah.
comes in. And then it's kind of weird. After he talks to Fuchs, he stands there kind of looking creepy. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Yeah. He just kind of creeps, like creepily looks on, okay, sounds
Yeah.
good, or something like
Because
that.
that's all he says is okay.
Okay. Yeah. And then just, yeah, he just stands there. It is kind of weird.
He leaves, and I counted it. It's approximately 9 seconds it took him to leave the area, and the lights go out. Fuchs, he takes, I don't know what he lit, a candle or something. I can't remember. And he
Little
goes
flare.
to the
I think it
doorway.
does. Or it is a candle. That's right.
I'm pretty sure it's a candle.
Yeah, it's a candle because they don't get the flares till a little later.
He goes to the doorway and something passes him. So could it have been McCready? It could have been him turning off the lights. And, for him, as you previously said, he's the only one that had the knowledge of Fuchs saying this. So maybe he was
Yeah.
to prevent that. It could have been. The last thing you see is Fuchs going outside and he finds either the underwear or the thermals of McCready in the snow is ripped. He was shocked at seeing that after he just seen McCready, which was kind of weird. I mean, if you just seen McCready and that happened right after, maybe he was trying to say that it was someone set him up or one of the creatures planted it there. I don't know. But
Yeah.
just from the inside look or the outside looking in, it could have been either one. I don't know. After that, that's when they're trying to find Fuchs. It's been an hour because he mentions it's been an hour since they seen Fuchs. He's been missing. Well, that's when Mac, Knowles, and Windows go outside searching for Fuchs, and they find Fuchs in the snow, burned. And he says, maybe it got to him, and he says, oh, maybe it burned. He burned himself before he was able to burn it. He told Windows to go in and tell them they found Fuchs burned. And he says, me and Knowles are going to stay out here. And Knowles says, well, what the hell are we going to do? And he says, when I left my shack yesterday, the lights were turned off and they all ominously looked up and they're
on. Yeah.
freaked out that lights are still on. Windows goes back in and tells everyone what's going on. And then they're locking everybody inside because it's been so long. They said, I think it was 45 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. Knowles and Mac are gone. They start boarding everything up because they think that they're gone or the creature got to them. That's when Knowles comes back and he said that he found the clothes up there in the shack. So something must have took McCready's underwear back up to the shack and planted it there, maybe.
Yeah, that
Null's
was kind of
trying
a weird little twist or plot thing. Like
yeah.
you see that happen, so you don't know if something's setting them up.
Hmm. So Knowles
You
says
don't know
that,
if McCree changed.
yeah, or if Knowles was already changed too. They're freaking out over McCready being the thing, and all of a sudden the knob starts turning. McCready gets in, he breaks into the storeroom. He has a stick of dynamite and he's threatening to light it on fire. Norris and Knowles,
Norris and
because
Norris had a heart attack.
yeah, he knocks him to the ground and Norris is having a heart attack. They have an argument like he's the thing, and if he's really who he is, of course everyone would be freaked out, but you're gonna listen to a man with this with a bundle of fucking dynamite. They all go into the medical room. That's where they take Norris because Norris is having the heart attack. And that's one of the things where I speculate it only reveals itself, well, obviously, when it's dying, trapped, or don't know if it knew that Norris had a heart condition, but it just exactly replicated that and it had to get out of the body. It knew that the body was dying and it couldn't do nothing about it. It was trying to get out of it, that situation. Copper was trying to resuscitate him. They had the paddles and everything. And that's when his chest rips open and it had jaws and it ate the arms of Copper, which was a pretty cool scene. That thing, that creature comes out and it still looks like Norris and it has spider legs and it goes to the top of the ceiling and it's growling and yelling. And then they come in and burn it. And in the meantime, I think which is the best special effects in the whole movie is when the head comes off the body, it drops off the body. It still looks so clean to this day. The head
Yeah,
coming
it
off and
does.
crawling, the tongue coming out of the head, the extra tongue
And
or
then
the
just
tentacles.
dragging itself.
Yeah, it looks so good. It's
Yeah,
so
that was
sharp
well
to this
done.
day. Hat grows arms like a spider, this infamous spider head creature, and they're burning everything, put everything out. The creature is underneath the desk, and no one's paying attention except for Palmer. So we have to take in consideration that Palmer could just let it escape. He's the only one that sees it. If they were hive mind or trying to protect each other, he wouldn't have let anyone know and say, "You got to be fucking kidding me." He would have just let it go. That goes back to my theory where you could say that it's still going to attack other creatures to protect itself because in direct threat, it's exactly copying people. So, like Mac, it would immediately react and try to kill it, and it knows that's what it's going to do. It's trying to eliminate even things of itself. So they
Yeah,
immediately burn it after. Why would he do that? I think that was a big thing. Like, why would he make them aware of the spider creature if he was trying to protect every single thing or they were just trying to take over? They all have to be individually minded, in my opinion, just trying to survive.
yeah. And then it was probably one of those. Well, self preservation is one thing, yeah, for sure. That was the whole blood test and everything. And another deal is like it may have even just known that hey, even if that other spider head thing could get to somebody else, it can't form into anything but until it assimilates. So it's gonna be hard to. I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those deals where it knows it's not gonna make it. Like that portion of them's not gonna make it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gonna die essentially because it's not gonna be able to get to anything else it needs to get to with people on such high alert. So maybe it just said, "Ah, well, that's another sacrificial piece." And hey, if I warn them about that one thing and they kill it, then that's less pressure on me.
Yeah.
I'm not being noticed now. They think, well, hey, I told you about it. Why would I be it? If I was it, I'd
Mm-hmm.
just let that thing go. Same thing you're talking about. But it could be replicating to the point where it's like it's a danger to itself too, or it could just be, yeah, that's another sacrificial piece. It's just a way for me to get my agenda going a little more to still stay replicate to what a human is,
Mm-hmm.
but try to like get them off my scent. Say, hey, look, I'm not one of them. I just ratted that thing out. Why would I rat myself out?
And that's
Could
exactly
be,
what happens to Mac. That they say, well, Mac burned it pretty fast. We could trust
yeah,
him. Like Clark was putting that in the air just to say we need to calm him down, but we still don't believe him because they were in a room together. After that happened, Clark got a scalpel and he was trying to sneak up on McCready, and McCready automatically turns around and shoots him. And before then,
Yeah.
to say how serious he was Charles saying, well, go ahead and shoot me, because he doesn't believe he's actually who he is. And McCready says, cocks the gun back and he says, I'm serious, Childs. And that's when he turns around and shoots Clark when he sneaks up on him. He ties everybody up except for Windows. It doesn't really give any credence to why he would pick Windows over everybody else. Maybe that's just the least common denominator of who may be the thing or not.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. Well, he was with Windows for a while, wasn't he? So he kind of
Yeah,
trusts Windows.
yeah, I guess so.
I don't
He
know.
took him
Who
outside
knows?
and
Like
everything.
that was kind of weird too. But
Hmm.
it was one of those deals where, okay, he's not going to trust Knowles. Knowles left him out in the fucking cold to freeze to death.
Yeah.
So he's going to tie up Knowles.
And
He's going to
Childs,
leave
he
the
just
others to
had to
be.
threaten Childs. No
Yeah,
one.
Childs, he hasn't trusted the whole entire movie. He
Mhm.
doesn't trust him. He doesn't think he's level headed. He thinks he's a hothead. So
Gary
you
was the
know
only
they
one
tie
with the
him up.
keys. Gary was tied up,
Gary was tied up, and so
and
was
so was Palmer.
Palmer. So Palmer was already tied up. No, it would have been Knowles. Knowles would have been tied up. Knowles was one of them. Because at the
Yeah.
very beginning, it was Copper, Knowles, and Gary, wasn't it? Or was it Palmer?
What are you
The
talking about?
first three that were tied. Because
Yeah,
remember they
all four
tied
of them were
and morphined
tied
them?
except for Windows.
Well, yeah, at that point they were. But before then, when they morphined people, they morphined
Oh,
Copper.
you're talking about before. So it was
Yeah,
Copper,
before.
Clark, Copper,
Clark.
Clark,
Clark was the other one.
and who was the other one? It's Gary.
Gary. Well, that's kind of interesting why they would tie up, why he would tie up. Maybe it's just one of the ones he picked. He just ended up picking to tie up, Palmer just to do it. Because at that
Yeah.
point, he was tying up everybody.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to like break it down. Like the only two people he'd be able to trust would have been Palmer and Windows, and maybe it was just one of those luck of the draw. Hey, he picked Windows. He picked the right one,
Hmm.
to trust at that point. It wasn't one of the deals where
Or he
you
could have.
knew why he knew why he wouldn't pick the other ones
Mhm.
because of the issues from the beginning. But at that point, it was either Windows or Palmer that he could have picked to be out to help.
Yeah.
And then he ended up untying um Knowles anyway to help, didn't he? Or Childs, I think it was Childs at the end. But he did end up untying because Childs replaces Windows when Windows is killed.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
they still continue with the test.
even before then, yeah, that's what we need to mention the test. That's why he tied him up so he could do the test. Mac has a
Yeah.
theory. Any part of this thing will, even if it's burned with a hot wire, he tells, for instance, that it will reveal itself or try to get away from a hot flame or whatever. So them four are tied up. One thing I've always had trouble with, and they should be the thing at that point, is Fuchs. First, McCready draws his blood with the scalpel. That's seen off
Yeah.
scene. He doesn't even talk about it. The first one they do after that is Palmer. Palmer's going to infect everybody. Everyone's infected at that point. They
Yeah,
cut
because the way they wipe it off is with the
just
genes.
his genes.
Yeah.
Palmer infects Gary, and that's what you were talking about, like how fast Gary was absorbed down in the basement, where the generator basement, with Blair, and he puts his hand in his mouth. I think he was already
Yeah.
a thing. That's why he was able to absorb him so fast or manipulate his skin. So he was trying to
Oh, you know what
eliminate
that
one
could
of
have been
his.
too is it could have been communicating. Could have been a way to communicate. If you
Yeah,
think about it, so like, yeah, sure, it showed his face, its hand to his face. The guy was already assimilated at that point, but maybe it's trying to figure out what it's doing. Well, what are you down here doing?
yeah. Or he was
What's going on
eliminating
with
a
you?
threat, in my opinion.
Yeah, that too.
That
But
they're
it could have been
direct
a
threats to each
combination.
other.
It could have been. It could have done that. It could have figured out. It's eliminating a threat, but it's also even figuring out, well, what are you doing? What's going on?
Hmm.
Why are you doing this? Or what's your purpose down here? Why are you down here? And then it
Yeah.
finds out, oh, well, you're a threat. Dead.
Hmm.
That could have been it too. The reason why he was able to shove his hand into Gary's face so easily was maybe
Morphed
they
it
were
so
both part of the
fast.
same being, so they were able to
Yep.
morph like that. Hence
That's
the
my
reason
opinion.
why
What happened?
that would explain why you see that frozen one that they took back from the Norwegian camp where it had the two faces kind of melded together like they were forming
Hmm.
into each other. and separated, it could have been the same thing. So it could be that these things could assimilate and become as one. You know,
Hmm.
if it if so, like if Blair goes to Gary, they could become one being at one point. You know, if they needed to.
Hmm.
Or if they wanted to, because he actually like shoved his whole hand, and you see like his hand just completely into the face, dragging him, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good point. The fact that they cut Palmer first, Palmer infected Gary, which in turn probably infected all of them
Yep.
at that point because they used the same scalpel because these idiots didn't really sterilize anything.
And you think Mac would know that, so he could be the thing just by doing that, like making sure
Yeah,
everyone was them, one of him too. And maybe they were thinking like if they became absorbed or make sure that they were more easily to eliminate in his mind if he was the thing. I don't know. It's just might even be a plot hole where John Carpenter was the thing, but I don't think that. I think that he was keen to think everyone was the thing at the end of the movie or near the end.
it would almost make sense in that way if you look at that scene alone, just the way that works. Yeah, and then the fact that Palmer would have to show himself at that point, it's just another part of the game. Because
Hmm.
by cutting Palmer's thumb, putting the blood in, and then going to the next guy, like if Palmer was last, then it would probably wouldn't have freaked out as bad. Like except for the whole blood test, if it would have worked, if it actually did work in theory like it was supposed to, it wouldn't have had to worry. But the fact that it was first, and then it ended up assimilating Gary, and then would have been Childs next, and then so on and so forth, Knowles. Then it would have been like because the McCready and I think McCready and Windows didn't. They were first, right? And McCready cut his thumb first, and then gave
Yeah,
it to
you mean the way he did the test or just the cut?
the cut,
Yeah, it was McCready first, and then it
and
was
then it was Windows, and then they
no,
started
no,
doing everybody else.
Windows
No,
was last.
oh, was it? So
It
shit,
was
man. So even
is is McCready, then it was Palmer, then it was Gary, then it was Childs and Knowles, and then it was Windows.
oh, see, that's weird. Why you would? Yeah, because that would infect everybody. So at that point, why the hell would the Palmer monster eat Windows or attack Windows? Unless they just
That
wanted to assimilate them quicker.
Yeah, that's why I was speculating like it only does that out of danger. The thing came out of Palmer to out
Or
of
McCready
survival.
wasn't turned yet.
Yeah, and well, I mean, too, he could have thought that took over all the way that he operates. So Palmer's like a panicky guy. He's gonna try to survive by all means. But the other ones are kind of collective. So I don't think the blood serum test would have worked anyway. Because like we were talking about earlier, is that Childs when he does his test, he's looking like, oh man, I'm gonna get find out, or he kind of doesn't know that he's one
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the things. Like,
yeah.
why wouldn't you know that you know unless you were the thing and you're gonna get found out? It's kind of weird in that way to misdirect you from, in my opinion, to think this person is the thing, or like fight or flight thing, that he's in such danger that these people are much more dangerous than I am because off bat, Gary was killing somebody. All the rest of them didn't hesitate to do anything that they had to do, especially McCready.
Yeah.
It's thinking that it needs to get away from McCready because McCready is just going to automatically eliminate him. That was more what it was thinking. Just trying to
And
just
then
have
he
survival.
did, you know. So
Hmm. And the
I
other
mean,
ones
soon as he
held
turned,
back because that's within their nature. They're more calm and collective. And then even if, like I said, if they did the test, it's not going to jump out of there because that's what it is. It's going to be ineffective. So you wouldn't be able to tell if they were the thing or not at that point, in my opinion.
yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah,
So after that, it's revealed that Palmer's the thing. McCready's flamethrower ain't working, picks up Windows because Windows is in the middle of getting eaten by the Palmer creature. So Windows is thrown to the side. The Palmer creature gets burned by Windows flamethrower. Everybody's freaking out because they're tied up. That would be horrific to experience. Someone burning and then there's a creature and you're tied up. It breaks out of the center that they're in, medical center, and McCready gets dynamite and throws it at him, blows him up, and that's what they were talking about in the commentary that was real live dynamite, and it
yeah,
got blown
almost
back.
it almost killed him.
Yeah, which was
Vandal flew by his face.
yeah, and it proves that Just Kurt Russell's the ultimate badass in film
Yeah.
ever. So
Boom. Oh shit.
he goes back in the room and he says, light, torch him, torch windows. He's turning and he's making the sounds and he torches him. And after that, he goes back to testing. Knowles tests okay. And then he puts the flamethrower on and Childs and telling him to get the fuck out, give me the fuck out of here. And then he puts on the flamethrower. So it's just Mac Knowles and Childs. At this point, to everyone's disbelief in mainstream everywhere, the black people would be dead instead of alive, but they're alive here. So rest
That's
assured.
when they yeah. Then that's when they test Clark's blood and find out he's not even the thing.
Yeah, well, they did that even before. They did Clark and Copper, and
Yeah.
that's when Child says, "Well, that makes you a murderer then." But that dissolves
Yeah.
everything when he proves that the test was correct. So maybe even McCready knew the way that the thing would react in Palmer because he's so panicky that it would try to get away right away.
Yeah.
After then, and that was another good line where Gary is the last one in the seat, and they swear that he was going to be the thing, and says, "I know you gentlemen have been through a lot. When you have the time, would you? I would like to not spend the rest of the winter tied to this fucking chair."
Yeah.
After that, they say that they're going to go test Blair, and when they go into Blair's shack, he's no longer there. I didn't mean to make it sound like Dr. Seuss. Blair is no longer there,
Yeah.
and they search.
Making rhymes every time.
Yeah, they search his shack, and they find flooring is uneven, so they pick it up and they find the tunnel, and he's been building a spaceship this whole time. So that's what I want to ask you. Do you think that Blair pre-planned this? He chopped up the radio and the chopper and everything, intentionally thinking to make this spaceship so he could get the fuck out of there. So he had that in the whole mind, and he was the thing this whole time.
Hmm. I don't necessarily think so. At that point, no. Well, when he was chopping stuff, I think he just like had a mental break in a way
Mm-hmm.
and just started chopping shit up. But there was access to those tunnels prior. Like they were even talking about it. Like if you look at like just like the layout and everything, they're talking about how where the generator would have been and everything. So those tunnels pre-existed. It wasn't like the thing made those tunnels. Those tunnels were already down there.
Yep. Well, it's more like
I think
making the spaceship or the ship.
I think Blair wasn't doing that. I think the thing was making that in those tunnels to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever it must have escaped or whatever happened, and then it may not have even been Blair actually breaking the chopper. It might have been somebody else. Because if you look, the build didn't look like him. It looked like somebody skinnier. To me, anyway. When you see somebody jumping out, it doesn't look like Blair. It looks like somebody skinnier
When?
breaking
Sorry.
or sabotaging the chopper.
Oh, okay. No, I think it was Blair.
I didn't think it was Blair personally,
No.
but or it could have been too. It could have been him sabotaging it, but yeah, but I don't think he was the thing yet because he was breaking that stuff so the thing couldn't leave.
Yeah.
You know, like breaking the radio so nobody can contact. I think he knew with all of his tests and everything, he knew like the writing on the wall, like, hey man, I gotta stop the thing from leaving or this monster from leaving. So I'm gonna sabotage the helicopter to make sure it can't fly out of here. I'm gonna destroy the vehicles. I'm gonna kill the dogs,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna sabotage the radios, and we'll figure this out. And then the guys just stopped him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then put him in there. I think the thing got to him from under the floorboards in those tunnels. So I think
Or
there was an independent thing there already. Got to him. So that was that whole entire point when they're looking at him. It's like, hey, I'm fine now. And there's some news hanging there. Like, I'm fine. I'm perfectly okay. He was assimilated at that point.
yeah.
At that point, he was assimilated. It's like, I want to be back inside where you guys are. Let me
Mm-hmm.
back in. I am okay. You know, that was when he was turned. But I don't think he turned when it was all busted up. I think he turned probably sometime around then. I think the alien got to him from under the floorboards in that tunnel system. And then it started when they were all doing their stuff upstairs, you know, trying to figure out who the alien is. By the time it was assimilated, Blair was already working on that stuff, you know, because he was assimilated at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until I don't think he was when he was breaking everything. I think he was maybe a little bit later after that. And he was putting that stuff together while everybody else was distracted with the tests and dealing with all the stuff that was going on there with Palmer and all that. I think he was out there working on all that stuff, letting them kill each other. Because by then it already got to Blair and was using Blair to do what it needed to do. And it may have got to Blair earlier, like even like before. It may have got to him. Well, it may have got to him when McCready drank that vodka and gave it to him.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like,
That could have possibly been it.
it's
So at
kind of
that
funny
point, so
that he
that would have
talked
been
about
right.
trust.
Yeah, but that would have been right after he broke everything and destroyed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they talked to him. So they locked him in there. And ever since he was locked in, once he got locked into that shed, that's when something got to him, I think, and turned him. So
Yeah.
it would have been after he destroyed everything. Because then he had like full reign of the whole entire area at that point, because those people were all turning on each other, freaking out. And then that could be the reason why Child left, because he did actually see him. He's seen Blair out there. He actually maybe did see him.
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't lying. He said, I thought I saw him out there. I went to go stop him. But being a storm and everything, it's hard to see. You get lost out there and have to come back because they were having to use tethers to get from building to building because the storm was so bad. It was like whiteout conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was building, I think he was taking stuff and using it to try to build this ship afterwards, after he destroyed everything. I don't think it was, I destroyed this stuff to get the components I needed to make a ship.
After that, they blow up the ship with sticks of dynamite. McCready mentions to him, we're probably not going to make it out of here alive. And they're going to light everything on fire or blow everything up, which they do. So they're blowing stuff up. They make it to the generator room because Mac also mentions need to go fix it or check it out. They went down to the generator room. Mac asks Gary to go check the generator. He says, Mac, the generator's gone. And he says, is there any way you can fix it? He said, McCready, it's gone. So there's no generator. So it took the generator maybe to the spaceship that's what I thought happened, that it was using the generator in the spaceship. After then, they're setting up dynamite. And that's another thing where the Blair creature is under direct attack, and it had to form this whole creature in order to eliminate Mac because Mac is such a threat. And it may even if he's assimilated by that time, he's definitely the ultimate thing creature, Mac, because he's just a one-man wrecking machine. Almost goes off when they're planting the dynamite, and he disappears. He's never heard from again. Who knows what happens to him? Maybe Blair sneaks up on Gary, and we previously talked about that, where he could possibly be the thing too, why he was able to stretch his mouth so fast. So he could possibly be the thing at the time from them cutting the blood. At that point, they were all the thing, in my opinion. So Mac has a showdown with the dog creature, which is always pretty cool to see that thing. And he ends up, with the line, well, fuck you too, and he throws the dynamite at him and it blows everything up. How McCready made it out of there, who knows? He's just that much of a badass. And that brings us to the end of the movie where Mac is staggering into a remnants of the building, and that's where he sits down and Childs comes up behind him with his flamethrower, and he says, Childs, where were you? And he says, I thought I saw Blair. And he went after him and he got lost in the snow. And then he goes and sits down directly opposite of McCready. And do you want to take it from there, Gerald?
Yeah, so that happens, and they sit there. And, well, you brought up a good point, and we never did find out whatever happened to Knowles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually, I didn't think about that until you said that. We actually did never find out what happened to Knowles. We know McCready killed we'll say it's the Blair-Gary combination monster. He killed that thing, obviously. Mm-hmm. Blew it up. But we never do know what happened to Knowles. Knowles could have just disappeared. That was kind of an interesting point. But anyway, so McCready's sitting there. He somehow finds a blanket and another bottle of J&B.
Yeah.
Don't know how many bottles he has of that stuff because he had. So if you look on his belt and everything, well, when they were wandering around, he had dynamite stuff. But he also had like the J&B bottles or a bottle of it anyway, with a rag in it. So it was made into a Molotov. It was ready to
Mhm.
go. So you would think that that was already made into the Molotov. Already had
Gasoline or
kerosene in it
kerosene
and
in it.
everything. Yeah, ready to go. Well, when he sits there and Childs comes in and tells him, I thought I saw Blair. I got lost in the storm. It's like it's real warm right now, but that's not going to last forever.
Hmm.
You know. Then McCready talks to him about how, like, well, what do you think we're going to do? Or looks like we're neither of us are in any shape to really fight with each other at this point. He just
Hmm.
hands him the J&B bottle, and knowing that Fuchs told him not to, share anything, he hands him the bottle. Charles grabs it and drinks it, and McCready smiles at the end, and then it just fades to black at end.
Yeah,
Goes
kind of
out.
laughs.
So at that point, you wonder, like, well, did he know? Was he assimilated? Did he know that Childs was assimilated, or did he put kerosene in that bottle and not drink it
Hmm.
and gave it to Child to see if Childs would try to drink to be
Or it could have been as
human?
ominous as he drank the gasoline and they were in agreement. Like when he drinks the gasoline, and that's why he thought it was kind of funny. Like they knew that they were
Yeah,
both the thing.
yeah, or yeah, it could have been both of them. It's like, yeah,
Hmm.
okay, you're one too. What always got me was the whole entire plan. Like, so they had the plan to like burn everything and destroy everything. I do not know why they didn't stick gung ho with that and go, okay, hey, it's just the two of us. We're not going to make it out of here. Dynamite, drink, boom, just
Hmm.
light. Let's go, man. We're going to get out. We're going to die this way. We're not going to freeze to death and just go out fast. I don't know. To all their own, I guess. You chose you're going to freeze to death. You're going to freeze to death. Might as
Yeah.
well drink a little bit beforehand. But God damn it, you knew like you couldn't leave any kind of organic material behind, essentially, or else this thing would try to replicate and just freeze. So why don't you just blow yourselves up? Not let them find bodies.
Hmm.
But like I said, at that point though, like even it wouldn't have mattered who was the thing if the plan was to freeze to die, just to freeze because it was dormant. It would just froze anyway. So even if it was McCready and Childs were both a thing, or even just one of them was a thing, they got their wish. They're gonna freeze. They're gonna be found later. It's
Hmm.
just a waiting game, and time means nothing to this creature. Obviously, if it's been frozen in the ice for 100,000 years, it doesn't care about the time.
You could say that they were accomplished at the end. Like you said, I think they would have blew themselves up to do the ultimate sacrifice. But I mean, no matter what, there's going to be a team of American scientists to go back there because they didn't send out no warning to say don't come here. They would go even the Norwegian base. They would have came out and
Yeah,
tried to rescue them and bring back.
eventually somebody would show up if they have no contact with them for so long. It's got to be plans in place. Like,
It's
hey,
in
we got to go see what's going on. These bases, they went dark.
Yeah, it's definitely going to come. Too, you think they would have thought of that or send some type of warning or something, which I mean they couldn't. I
Well,
mean, how could have they have done that?
McCready McCready did think of that though because he left that tape recording. Obviously, well, unless it got
Well, if he
destroyed.
blew everything up though.
Yeah, if he blew it up, I don't know where it would have ended up. But like he was talking about saving that, or he was saying that he hid that tape recording. So that tape recording was kind of like McCready's plan to like let people know. It's like, hey, this is what I'm. This is like a recording of what the events happened. Nobody trusts each other. It's a monster or it's a thing that's assimilating people. Like he kind of like laid it out a little bit. So maybe at that point, before I obviously he thought about it, he had that in his mind before he decided to blow up the whole base and start fires everywhere. They thought about like we gotta leave. I gotta leave a warning to somebody who finds us because obviously they're not gonna find me. I'm gonna probably be dead along
Hmm.
with the rest of us. But at least it's a tape recording of a warning of what this stuff is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Norwegians did that or not either. Uh, Probably not because they were trying to chase it down and kill it before it reached the other base. So the Norwegians probably didn't. They have recordings of them digging this thing up and finding the craft and all that documentation, but
That wouldn't
you
have
never really
prevented
find out.
them from going and collecting samples and them getting infected. So,
Yeah, and
No matter what, I think they're
you
all it's gonna attack the world anyway.
yeah, it'll just go out. It eventually get to where it needs to get to, regardless, because eventually somebody's gonna come when
Hmm.
those bases are when the bases fail to communicate. They're gonna send somebody down to figure out what happened, and I
Yeah.
guarantee you that they wouldn't just leave bodies there. You know,
Yep. They'd try to
they
collect
wouldn't
as
just
much
go,
stuff
"Oh,
as
hey,
they could.
there's bodies here. Let's just leave them in the cold. Screw that. We'll just tell their family that hey,
So I know
they
the
died."
movie ends in the unknown, but we exactly explained this is what's going to happen. They're going to be people coming to save them, and they're going to find all the stuff, recover the stuff, take it back, and there's going to be a little piece of the thing that's going to take over the world. So
You know, reanimate and take over still.
inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah, regardless, it's still gonna happen. It's they all the stuff they did was for nothing. It just
Yep.
made for a good story, but for nothing.
Mhm. Yep. So that's my
So
ultimate theory behind it is that pretty much everyone was the thing. The thing even attacks itself to protect itself because it knows it's in danger. So at the end of the movie, I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Childs and Mac are the thing.
yeah,
This was the Thing episode, Villains and Creeps. Much love, everybody. Salute.